We welcome you to the Priscilla R. Tyson Cultural Arts Center for our conversations and coffee on this 6th day of February, 2025. I'm Ellen O'Shaughnessy, coordinator of the program. We are delighted to have with us today Melissa Vogley Woods, who's our loft gallery artist and artist in residence. Melissa, you share you are a multidisciplinary visual artist, teacher, and artist curator, born keeper of the arts. And Melissa is a multi-generational caregiver of 30 plus years to 2 children and parents who suffer with health challenges. Care for them informs her practice, one that is aligned with her life as a way to delve into the intricacies of care within relationships with a specific focus on barriers and how we bridge them. Melissa's metaphorical work spans between public art, social practice, and intimate exploration of the object. Her latest work explores fiber arts, rope making, enameling, jewelry, installation, and her traditional medium of scaiola. It's a traditional plaster craft that mimics marble. So you're going to tell us more about that, huh? Recent recognition that Melissa has received includes a National USA Fellowship nomination, 2 Ohio Arts Council Individual Artist Grants, a Greater Columbus Arts Council Individual Artist Grant. Melissa has exhibitions locally, nationally, and internationally in such institutions as the Wexner Center for the Arts, Columbus Museum of Art, Museum of Sisters in Armenia, and Los Angeles Contemporary Exhibitions. She attended the Massachusetts Museum of Contemporary Art, Vermont Studio Center, the WASEC Projects residencies. Amazing. Melissa's work has been written about in the Brooklyn Rail along with other publications. She's a dedicated arts organizer. Recent curatorial projects include Lobby, a series of 3-person exhibitions held in Planned Parenthood Surgical Center, and Room to Let series held in donated houses that exhibited 70 artists over 3 years of programming. Artist, curator, organizer within that curator, our artist in residence, Melissa Vogley Woods. Welcome to you.
Thank you. That was the sweetest introduction. Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here, and I would like to say thanks to the Cultural Arts Center for everything. I am just now finishing up being the artist in resident here, and it's been a fantastic experience on like many, many levels. The work that I did outside that you'll see later in the talk is some more experimental work that's took a big deviation away from my last bodies of work, but it really does circle back to some earlier work that I'm going to show you. So today we're going to look at some work that goes back to, I think this is, 2016. So not quite 10 years, maybe 8-9 years of work. I've been an artist for about 35 years, and that's just too much work to talk about. So we're just going to focus in on these last few years where my work took a big turn. I am from Columbus, Ohio. I went to school at Northland High School. I went to Fort Hayes Career Center for Fine Arts. I went to the Kansas City Art Institute for my college, for my undergrad, and I went to the Ohio State University for my graduate degree. So I have an MFA in printmaking, and I have a Bachelor of Arts in painting. and I've just always done sculpture. So I have a very wide variety of work that I use and materials that I use. My work in general is informed by the idea. So usually I get a bit of an idea first, something that I want to explore, and I do an amount of research into that idea. I start to read things, look into different things about that idea, and then out of that I decide what medium it needs to be. So I do really move around in the mediums, even though the concepts kind of, you'll see the concepts unfold in slowly change over time, and there's one informs the next. Okay, so that said, we're going back to 2016, and I started painting again after not painting for, I don't know, maybe like 5 years, which is a pretty good break for me from painting. I've just taken another about 5-year break, or maybe 3-year break from painting, 4-year break. But these are some of my paintings that I did when I returned to painting. And at this time, I really wanted to show layers. I wanted to show things that are piled up. And I wanted to talk about things that are piled up, layered, stacked, and put into storage, that exist but don't really see the light of day. So my influence was quilts. So handmade quilts that people make that you fold up and you stick in the closet. So in a way, I really was interested in talking about like the baggage that we carry that is sort of like in there, that we're not necessarily showing or pulling out. That was the impetus to start this project. It came out of some work that I'm going to show you at the end. So these are works on paper. They are about that big. They're in acrylic, and I used a lot of translucency and really bright colors to kind of just explore these folds and overlaps. Things that I would be referencing this painting is this blue. This is Yves Klein blue. Yves Klein was a conceptual artist from the 50s and 60s who used that blue color in his work, and I wanted to reclaim that blue and use it in my work to make a little bit of a statement about the claiming of something by someone, that you can't necessarily own a thing and claim the power over that thing. So I was kind of playing with the blue against Yves Klein. I also did a whole series of videos before this that used that same blue. Those video works were at the Wexner Center, which is a whole nother body of work that we could just talk about if you are curious. Okay, so as I was exploring the piles, what I noticed started to happen is I started to go into the piles. So as I was zooming closer and getting into each layer, the layers began to kind of be reminiscent of fingers or bodies, or they just took on a little bit more of a visceral quality of something different than just layered quilts and color. I started at this point to look at landscape, and I don't know if you can see the reference, but these are starting to expand and get deeper in space. The color is still very expressionistically open and not really in particular trying to mean anything in particular here. It's really just like having one set of colors fighting against the other set of colors. I started to get interested in opposition here. So I wanted to bring the antagonist, which in the earlier work was the Yves Klein blue. I wanted to bring the antagonist in as this arch that I began to develop. So you see the little bit of arch here. I'm starting to bring these archways in. The arch comes from looking at Roman architecture. So I got really interested in this fellow named Domitian, who was an emperor way back in the Roman days, and he was kind of a somewhat corrupt ruler who insisted on having these archways put into his home, his Duomo, which was also a palace, and he wanted to be in those domes to project his divinity. It's a long story, but he was kind of a little bit of a loose cannon, and he was afraid someone would assassinate him. Well, he did get assassinated eventually, but he wanted to be able to also see, like, so that no one could go behind him. He would just like be in these domes. So I took this alcove archway from looking at Rome, looking at the Palatine Hill and the ruins there. I like it because it's strong. It's a strong architectural form, but also it can be used in a more menacing way. And I just really kind of attached to that arch form. I started to use it in many different ways in my work, but you'll see that it tends to be a bit of a disruptor. So each one of these paintings comes with a whole series with them. So this is from the landscape series. This one piece is called Rainbow Whip. You can see how the arches are kind of cutting into and shoving into the more body-like curvier forms. I keep pointing this the wrong thing. This is from another body of work. So each body of work tends to be about 20 pieces. Sometimes it's more. The blue paintings before were there's about 50 of those pieces. And I'm just showing you like one piece from each body of work. Yes.
How large are these?
These are quite large. Like if I had it sitting here, it'd be about this big. The paintings with the blue background are about that big. Yes.
Do you sketch those before you?
I don't. No, I just go start painting. I typically have. That's a good thing to bring up because here's my sketchbook I wanted to show you. I don't do very much sketching. Like I might just say, oh, something like that, and if I draw it out, I literally will not make it again. If I drew a nice drawing, that would be it, and I'd feel like I did it.
Is that on paper or canvas?
This is on canvas. The previous piece as well. This is on canvas. This is on paper. Yeah. This is a larger painting on paper. That's a taller paper. This one's quite large. It's probably from this edge to here. So I move a lot around in scale. And this one's, again, like about this tall. A lot of these paintings from the series are on view. If anyone ever is in Mansfield, the Mansfield Art Center right now, they have a whole bunch of my pieces there. So this is probably around 2017. This is about when I started to learn scagliola. So this is a scagliola piece. It is about this tall and this wide, and it weighs like 20 pounds. They're very heavy, these pieces. I've got a couple pieces here for you to look at and touch. You can touch these. I found the process online when I was kind of looking into some things that I remember seeing in Dresden, Germany. So I went on a residency to Dresden that is sponsored through the Greater Columbus Arts Council. And I saw someone working in plaster that the plaster just wasn't drying, and they were just using it like a sculptural process. And normally, if anyone's done anything in plaster, it dries immediately. You don't have a lot of time. You can't do a lot with it. So I just started Googling and finding images and digging and finding about what this was. And I finally, after a lot of time, found what it was called. And it is called scagliola. It has a G in there, but the G is silent. And because I was really interested in all of these layers, and some of the work you'll see at the end, which is from some older work, I've done a lot with layers and building and things that are accretion. That I think is the thing that really drew me to scagliola, is because it is made out of layers of pigment, and you cut and carve the layers, and there's a stage when scagliola is very moldable, and there's a stage where it's solid. It is made out of plaster, so it cures, and then it's polished just like marble. It's a very time-consuming process, but I really fell in love with it, and so it kind of came into my work and informed a lot of the work that I did for several years. But I did keep bouncing between sculpture and painting at this stage. I also started to bring in actual figure. So I have a very big figurative painting history. I also have a quilt making history where I would do quilts and painting together, as well as a printmaking past, photography with stitching, and there's many other things. But I want you to pay attention here to the little bit of figure. This is an arm, and this is another arm here. So with this series, there's a slow migration of figure coming into the abstraction. I wanted to get back into kind of being a little bit more direct about some internal struggles between people. This is where I think I began to come back to thinking about relationships and struggle between people. And this is kind of me going back into thinking more personally about my work and relating to my personal experience.
Titled before you actually put the arms in?
No, I title everything after. Sometimes I change my titles. Titles are hard. But I wanted to talk about with this about sound. I felt like this was very echoey, an echo chamber of time. A lot of these paintings, I was thinking about time and distance between people, and I'm always fascinated with the space between us and other artists of the past. Oh, that's the black and white one, the black and white-ish.
Hold it on reverb. Did you do a series on that?
Oops, I'm going the wrong way. That one had about maybe 20 paintings. 20 seems to be my general vibe. And they were all really quite big, and there were some very small little ones that were very sweet, that were right at the pandemic. It was the little tiny ones, and then I was like, I can't paint. So
where are they now? Where are those?
A lot of them are sold. I have a few, and right now a lot of them are at the Mansfield. They have probably 30 of my pieces right now, which is cool. Forward.
You store your paintings.
They're
Sold.
Exactly. Where? All over my house. I have a loft built in my studio, and it's all up in there. And I really do throw some stuff away. I hate to say, but I toss. Oh. Yeah, I do.
Meet me. I'm Mr. Trash Can.
You can give me your number. I have stuff that I just need to get away from the studio. Like, I don't like to have my work in view while I'm working right now, so I've had to wrap it all up and store it and stash it. And I get sick of things, and I mean, if you drive by my alley, there's stuff back there. But it's not very good stuff, I'm just telling you.
Store stuff either, but I can't see, you throwing stuff
Nothing
away.
like this. I don't throw these things away, but like, there are bad ones. There are ones where, like, I will just dead stop halfway through a painting paintings are always savable, but like if a sculpture's really not going the way I want it, it's in the trash. I break it right in half and out it goes.
Do you share that with your students at Denison?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, they would love that stuff.
Yeah, I'm like, not everything's going to be great. Like, you're going to have a lot of stuff that you're just like, oh, God, I can't believe I made that. Or just, you're like, I got to get rid of these right now. I don't want to look at this anymore. I don't want anyone to even know it exists. Goodbye. Yes.
You mentioned being influenced by Roman architecture.
The archways, yeah.
Did you do like a residency in Rome? Or?
I did not, but I did go to see the Palatine Hill. Yeah, and I believe I got a grant from the Greater Columbus Arts Council to do that. Thank you, GCAC.
Oh, were you there?
I think I went for 2 weeks. It was the same time that I learned Scagliola, and I went to find Scagliola in Italy because that's one of its homelands. It's kind of northern Italian process, also the very bottom of Germany. That's where it originated. And I just you can't really find it online. It's hard to find any information about it online. So I had to just go to Italy, seek out people who knew how to do it, ask them to talk to me about it. Some people didn't want to tell me their process. Some people did. I got a lot of information out of just looking at original Scagliola. So it was a very slow process of learning it through just little tips and tricks from different people. I was able, on a second trip to Italy, go to a town called Rima, which is at the very top of Italy in the Alps. The houses look like they're German. It's a waterfalls like magical place, and that is the home of this one particular kind of scagliola that's a very, very, very masterfully made scagliola that like I don't have these skills yet at all. Like these people blow me away, and I got to study with a artist named Simone who gave me many demos and showed me lots of tricks of the trade that he is the only one that knows them. He's the last of a line of craftsmen that do this material, and there's no one else taking it up. Like it's just going to die with Simone. So it's just really fascinating to see like this craft that is well known in some places still in Italy and some places in Europe and in Russia, but like in a huge amount, like it's virtually unknown here in the United States. Not people call me from other places to like advise on their scagliola. I went to Montreal to work on a big, huge sculpture to fabricate for an artist out there, and Canada would rather have a Canadian artist fabricate, and so it was a big deal. We had to do a big dossier and get lawyers to get me to be able to even work in Canada, because I was the only expert in all of the Americas that could go. And I've been working on it for like 7 years, so I'm, 8 years. So it's was kind of teetering on the edge there kind of craft, even though it's still quite common in some parts of Italy. So it really depends on where you are, but here in America, it's very uncommon.
You're gonna keep it alive.
Yeah, I'm keeping it alive. And do you guys know the green columns in the downtown library? If you go to the downtown library, next time you go, there's these green columns. Those are scagliola. They are American style. So it's a very different technique than what I use. But I will be repairing those in like 3 weeks because there's one that's broken on the upstairs. So I'll take pictures, and I don't know where I'm going to post them, but I'll take pictures.
Bravo.
Yeah, thank you.
Closed shop to work on it? Will people come?
No, I will be in the library working on it.
Come and watch
Yeah,
it?
you can see me in there just making the...
I have a question on the location. Does the geography have something to do with the materials? Why is it that?
I think that the history of scagliola, it did have something to do with the lack of ability to get marble at the time. It was originated around 1550 is the earliest kind of earliest scagliola that they have dated. It could, I don't know if that's a true date or not. It seems to be around the 1600s when it was being developed, and you could just make it on site. Somebody invented it. It's unclear who invented it, but once it was invented, it got shared amongst this architectural craftsman community, basically plasterers teaching other plasterers, and then you could kind of make the marble on the spot. You didn't have to go around a war at the time and like try to cart some marble from some other place, and it was just economical. And then it became a craft and it became an art. So it slowly built up. So there is some scagliola that is astounding, like these inlaid altarpieces that are just inlaid with flowers and birds and outlines and all this very, very fancy, amazing stuff that's all over Italy. And they're just sitting right there in the churches and all over the place. So I was shocked how much I found. And I do have a database online. So I can, I will write down to remember to, I can send a link or something, or maybe everyone can write down their emails and I can send you.
Is it as hard as marble? I'm sorry.
It is just about as hard as marble, but you cannot put it on the floor. You can't put it outside because it is plaster.
You can't put it outside.
Cannot go outside. It can withstand huge temperature changes. Like my studio is not heated in the winter. I mean, I turn the heat on when I go there, but I'm not always in there. And it's perfectly fine in the freezing cold or in the warm. So it fluctuates just like marble. It works really well with concrete. They put it right on the walls, just like as if it's a marble facade and marble columns, but they're literally scagliola, and you cannot tell the difference. You literally cannot tell. I know, it's amazing. Okay, SCAGLIOLA. Sorry, I'm dyslexic. Takes a minute. And then you can Google, you'll see a lot of images of it. So Scaiola was going on while I was painting these paintings. And this is also when I started getting into the black and white. So see how the black and white just kind of is in this middle area, and then the color pops out. This was just, again, about sort of working through suppression, some things that you suppress and things that come out. Just kind of in general. I think about a lot of different things in my work, but that's kind of a generalization. See how these are all low contrasting? They're also being suppressed back through that. Yes?
The red lines going down, that really means something to me. But I
Good.
quite don't understand it. I like the feeling of the blue.
Oh, cool. Yeah, this whole blue.
The blue, and then the yellow over there really kind of,
Oh, yeah.
It gives you and then the background where it gets lighter and lighter, it gives you a unique feeling.
Oh, great. That's awesome. This painting is quite large. Like from that door, like to here, it's really, really big because it went into the Columbus Museum of Art for a show. So I was like, well, I better make something big. I put it in there and it looked tiny. I'm like, come on, man. Because it's so big walls, Okay. So these are when I started to use Scaiola to make installations and like just kind of explore Scaiola. There's lots of different things I've done. These are cast in a mold. So I made a large archway mold and started to I wanted this fallen arch. So it's kind of manifesting the things that were in the painting into reality. Something that you have to walk around, something that like interrupts your walk. On this, every time I arrange this work, it's reconfigured in a different way. Sometimes it's all stacked up. Sometimes it's stretched out like this. And then on top, sitting on this kind of plinth of the fallen arch, are some inlay Scaiola pieces. And inlay is, let me see if I can get to an inlay. I'll go back to that other piece, but this is an inlay Scaiola. It is about this big. It's actually the same size as this piece. This has inlay. So when you come up, you're going to touch it, and you'll see that it's all smooth and flat, but I carved out the shapes. These pinks are carved out and refilled with a different color of Scaiola. They fuse together in the chemical process when they're curing, and then you polish and flatten the whole thing. So this is a traditional process used by Scaiolists, more the artistic type, but that's basically, those are inlays. So right around now is more figuration coming in. Thinking about conflict, thinking about relationships, and thinking about like things you hold on to that maybe are conflicting against each other. I started to bring in wrestlers. So these are wrestlers from like sports, like the Olympic wrestlers. Yes.
What type of pigments do you use to put into the marble?
Oh, it's all kinds of earth pigments, all kinds of pigments. They're powdered pigments.
Okay.
And I mix them into the plaster. And then I mix each one of these colors. These are all mixed individually. And then I put all the little balls of those colors together, stack them up, and then I lay those into the mold.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a lot of pigment. I've got a whole wall of pigment.
Do you make your own pigment?
No,
Okay.
I just buy them from New York in this really great pigment place.
I just knew a doctor that painted in marble, and he used to
Oh, yeah.
put he made his own pigments.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I've thought about it. I got close with the work outside, actually. I did natural dyes, which I feel like is close.
He went into deep detail on the minerals and this and
Oh,
that.
there's so much.
Yeah, he was a doctor. And
I mean, that makes sense that he would be into that because it's a lot of chemistry, and some of them are extremely toxic, extremely. So you got to be I got to wear a whole mask situation. I also use a wet grinder to polish it down, so I have a whole headgear thing. It's a lot. It's very physically demanding. But you can see it in here. We've got some wrestlers. I spent many years adding wrestlers to my paintings. And this is where I started to get into this thing about relationships and people, and really kind of thinking about people and families. I always like to keep my work really open and not say much about what I'm thinking on each piece. But this series of work has the arch, has the red, it has the black and white, but then the figures coming in here. So I started to get really excited about kind of getting closer to talking about the human body and the human, letting the people be in the work. Yes.
How do you work when you have this gigantic piece that goes from here to there? Do you
Yeah.
run up and down and?
Yeah. I actually stretch the canvas on the wall, and then I work on it on the wall, and then when it's done, I take it off the wall and stretch it on the stretcher because I hate the bounce. I hate that. So I always paint my paintings right on the wall. I like staple it, gesso it, paint it, and then I like to have multiple paintings going at the same time because I don't paint linearly. I don't paint just one after the other. You know what I mean? Linearly. Thank you very much. I just have to have a couple going at the same time because sometimes I get stopped on one and I'm like, I don't know what to do. I have to wait. And then I go to the next. I don't know what to do. I got to go over here. And then sometimes I'm like, I hate painting. And I just go make a sculpture and then I go back. So
That's consistently how you
yeah.
process your
Yes.
problem solving.
Yes. I have to stop. All these got done at the same time because they were all in process at the same time. I don't work on one thing at a time. I have many things going on at the same time. So I think it's my ADHD that maybe because I like to do many things at once.
Too, but I wouldn't call it ADHD. I don't know what I call it.
Yeah, I guess it's just you're like maybe it's not, but I feel like there's something in the way that I work that I want to have. I like to do multiple things at once, and I kind of fuse it. It kind of fuses together as I go.
So you don't have a preference on which thing you're working, like sculptures, paintings, the sky.
There's times when I just don't, like right now I don't want to paint. It feels like I'm like, why do I want to paint right now? But it might just like I kid you not, like tomorrow I might be like, I think I'll do a series of paintings. Like it's very, I have this kind of, I work on the feeling, like it doesn't seem right to do a painting right now. Like I'm very much into this very visceral experience. And so it's hard to control. It does move in a nice slow arc. I don't feel like I'm all over the place like a pinball machine, but sometimes I feel like I'm all over the place like a pinball machine, but I'm not, because it does make sense in a line.
You teach, though. You teach.
I teach.
What do you teach?
Sculpture and printmaking and painting.
Oh.
Yeah. So I do teach. You'll see no printmaking here because it's not my favorite, but I do have a master's in printmaking. I know. It's not funny. I'll teach a printmaking class and I'm like, boy, I haven't done this in 10 years. So so that's just how teaching goes sometimes. You just like, you know it, you can pull it out at any time. But sculpture is my favorite thing to teach. And I think it maybe is my favorite thing to do is sculpture. I do love painting when I am painting, but when I'm not painting, I'm like, oh God. I think painting is very hard. It takes your, you're making decisions constantly every minute on your painting. Whereas sculpture, you're not constantly changing something every minute. You're like, I'm going to wrap this now. And that's at least a day of no decisions. You're simply wrapping something. Whereas painting, if you're like, I'm going to put this red thing here, the red thing just changed everything. So painting is very hard.
What a gift to your students. You are teaching painting at Denison University.
The painting's at the other place. It's Fran Ryan.
Okay.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
Those insights would be so encouraging.
Oh, I
That's
try to
cool.
keep them going. They seem to like me, my students. I keep them going, I keep them going. I think I'm pretty encouraging, and I tell them all my professional practice things. I'm also funny. It's like 50% entertainment, I think, the teaching. So real quick, all of a sudden I did this, so I've got to explain it. So I was painting, right? The things, the figures. I'm thinking about relationships between people and tensions, and then the pandemic happened. At that time, I was teaching like 3 sculpture classes and a drawing class at Denison, two sculpture classes, a drawing class, and I had to teach online. And we all remember the pandemic. You were just at home, so I just was like, I tried to paint, and I'm like, this just feels so pointless, and like I'm not gonna just sit here and make an image. So I just stopped painting, and I happened to have this a roll of high density reflective vinyl that I have used in several projects, which I didn't include the image of. But it's the kind of material that, like, when you're driving down the street and your headlights hit a stop sign and it lights up, that's the material that I had. I had a whole bunch of it, a huge roll, and I started to think about, I want to make my house into an art piece for people to see, since we're all stuck inside. The only thing you can do is you can take a walk. So I started to think about that. And it took me a month of thinking about what does this mean? What do I do? What's it going to be? I zeroed in on the windows, because this is the space between us, between inside and out. It's a portal. I started to think about, what image do I want it to be? And what I came to is, I didn't want to make the image myself. So I was like, well, where am I going to get the image? So what I did was, this is a textile pattern that was made in 1919. Now, what happened in 1919? The Spanish flu. It was the same kind of strain of pandemic. They had the same kind of pandemic at that time. I wanted to reach back to the past to talk about the current condition. So I borrowed this fabric pattern that was made by an artist named Raoul Dufy, and I used his fabric pattern, and I hand cut all of these shapes and taped them into my window, so that when someone would come to the house, they would need to use the flash on their photo to be able to see it. So this is photo taken at the same time. This photo had the flash on, and this one did not have the flash on. So it was about highlighting the space between us. It was about a lot of things about sharing. Like, then the person had the piece in their phone, they could take it home with them. It just kind of was dancing around a lot of different things that were going on at the time. People then took photographs and shared them. I had a little handout here, and there was some little candles that were always out every night telling you what to do. There was a QR code where you could upload your picture. This was somebody's photo. So a lot of people came by. I think that this is someone took a photograph with a blue piece of cellophane on their flash, and it turned the whole thing blue. But the funny thing is, like, only the person with the camera could see it. So if you were even standing next to the person with the camera, it reflects directly back. It doesn't reflect to an angle. So it was just a very personal kind of a one-on-one experience. This was on, like, Neal Avenue. Yeah.
News or something.
Yeah. There was some press.
At the Columbus Museum of
Yes, that's right.
Art. I didn't get to see it.
It's still at the Columbus Museum of Art. It's up. I think this video may work. So you can see, this is my camera, and you can see it starting to light up because my camera's doing that pre-flash thing. And then when you hit the flash button, it flashes and like lightens it up. So that's the actual photo from the car. So it was also kind of like a drive-by situation. You didn't have to stop and walk out. Yeah, it was fun. And I was like, this is such a fascinating new thing to do. And I'm like, is this who I am now? Do I make high density reflective vinyl installations? Well, I did one other, and then I was like, okay, on to the next thing. But really, from this piece, it really informed everything I do now, which is that I really think about plants and healing and what a plant can be, and what an herbal healing is, and what the intention behind healing, and the intention behind knowledge of things that can help, and trying to help each other and trying to help other people. It's about the intention and the inability to help. We can't always help. Sometimes our help is not helpful. So then after this, all my work was thinking about that. So sometimes you'll see it in the work, and sometimes you won't see it in the work. It can be clear or unclear, but that's basically how I come to the rest of my work after this. So that was another video that I don't think works. That was my house, yeah. I moved since then. We also filmed a movie in that house, which is a whole nother story. My husband's a filmmaker. Yeah, that's a whole nother story.
Question.
Yeah. Huh.
If it's ADHD, have you been diagnosed and you medicated?
Yeah.
Oh.
No, I don't take any medication.
So that That helps
Yeah.
you continue to create.
Yeah, I didn't want to change anything. When you're late diagnosed to something, you're like, oh, I've already adjusted. Like, this is just how I don't want to mess with anything. So it's funny. But of course, with everything else, things are on the scope. You could just have a little, who knows? But basically, yeah. So then it was still pandemic, lockdown, boring. And Anna Lee, who was the curator of photography at the Columbus Museum of Art, had come to see my piece, really liked it, talked to the Columbus Museum of Art and said, hey, can we do a little something on the outside of the museum because it was closed? And I was like, yes, let's do it. And so I worked with the whole team there over a period of maybe 4 months to try to come up with what we would do. And what turned out, I had to do some research on the collection. I was like, well, it needs to come from the museum itself. Like, what image? I can't do Raoul Dufy again. So I found a different artist to pull from. This is Louise Boucher's painting, made in the same time period as the Spanish flu. I believe it's from 1919 or 1920. It was the same kind of time period. And this flower burst was the thing that I took and turned into a pattern that got put on the glass where you enter into the museum so you can see it. It's a high density vinyl as well. This piece was kind of drawing back to the original, the founding collection that started the museum. It talked about the role of still lives in people's lives, like as a respite from troubles. I got very interested in the still life after this. I never painted a still life, but I started looking at other artists' still lives. So this is the CMA installation that is semi-permanent, so it is there today. You can go, if you're ever there in the evening, it doesn't quite work in the daytime, but you want to point your camera up to the ceiling and take a flash photo, and you'll get this pattern. In the evening, yeah. Like during the day, it just looks like this. It's still pretty, but it's a play on the light. It makes a nice shadow. So that piece is there, and there's a little bit more information about it. Okay, so after I did that work, I'm going to speed up a little bit so we have time to talk about the work outside. So after I did those two Always pieces, they were called Always, I made a large series of cyanotypes. This series of cyanotypes used the figure. It used floral patterns. I used the exact floral patterns from the two Always projects and merged them together. This exhibition showed, I think that there were probably 50 of these that I made. Here's the exhibition on view. I put them all into a timeline. This was coming out of the pandemic during a time of protest and kind of upheaval in our country. And so I feel like it kind of reflected some of that inadvertently. The archways are still in here, as you can see. This was at the Hammond Harkins Gallery. Yeah, but it's also been at a couple other locations. Oops, wait, yeah. It went to some other locations that I don't quite remember. They might have been written up in the news. Sometimes the stuff gets written up in the news. Right after that, I wanted to just focus in on time and light, so I made this series of postcards to mail to people, another thing that was kind of talking about connections. These were made by just holding my hand on a piece of paper with a pencil for like 5-10 minutes. And as the sun went by, it moved the shadow over and made these blurry hand images. So it was kind of like marking the time that it would take to write a letter. Even so, in a way, like I didn't have anything to say, but I wanted to send something out that had to do with like spending time thinking about a person. And that's where this project was kind of born out of, about spending time, about sending something to people, about writing letters. Yes?
Is it cyanotype?
Cyanotype.
And
In the
then
sun. Outside, yeah.
Immediately put the liquid and then your hand.
Yeah, it was already prepped ahead of time, dry, and then I just would take the little sheet and put it out and sit in the sun and hold my hand on there as if I was writing a letter. So if you see them up close, there is one little dot of lead from the pencil. And then I mailed them to my friends, and they had one other thing about them. They had this little text on here about the project, about the sun and time and things like that. Yes?
What the previous one, they were on a paper.
Those were done multiple times. So it was on those are about this big. And it's multiple layers of cyanotypes on top of itself. So I would do like one cyanotype layer, rinse it, dry it, retreat it with cyanotype material, expose it to light. I made all of these paper cutouts and different things.
Red.
The paper was red. The ones with the color, the paper was already a color. I wanted to have the color disrupt the cyanotype a little bit, like the condition of the paper to kind of make the cyanotype less clear.
You don't touch anything. It is not layer by layer. It is one time but different.
Many different cyanotype layers, but one piece of paper. Yeah, one piece of paper.
Exposures, is that what you?
Different exposures. Thank you. There you go. That's the language.
Melissa
Yes.
Vogley Woods, hasn't this been amazing?
Yeah.
And you're going to lead us out into.
I am. But I've got a few. I'm going to flip through really quick. I know it's time. I'm going to go really quick. So these are some sculptures that were also from those shapes. We're just going to flip through at this point.
Material.
Scagliola. It's multiple layer. Oh, I'm pointing at the wrong thing.
And how big did you suggest these were?
Those were like the Scagliola sculptures about that. These are some still lifes that I did not paint that were influencing the next batch of work, which are these leaf-based pieces. These are all Scagliola sculptures and some paintings. So you can see how I'm getting into the botanical. All of these botanical shapes are from still lifes painted by artists in the past, like in the medieval time, Renaissance, different specific paintings that I wanted to reference. And then there's also some figuration in there. All of the still life painters were women, so I just was kind of drawing a matriarchal line through time with this work. And I also isolated some of mouth shapes that I was exploring as a way to talk about like things that are handed down. Okay, we're getting close to the end. These are some seats that have botanical remedies from the medieval times carved into them. And that's a good stop. That's the end. So then we're going to go see the work that I did outside. Now the work, should I pause and then just go talk outside? Yeah. Okay.
You've got your microphone.
Yes. Okay, we did it. Okay, well, thank you for coming out to see the show now. So this series of work, the last work that you saw in the slideshow was work that was really focused around looking at botanical plants as remedies, to kind of talk about things that people do to try to create a site of healing, to actually invoke healing or to convince someone that they're going to get better. And then from that, I stopped working in all the mediums that I was accustomed to, and I began getting interested in looking at natural materials. So I spent about a year investigating rope making from plants that you can collect here. Everything that I used, except for this foundational rope, is not handmade, but like the smaller rope on the inside, this is made from a collection of plants that I foraged. These were from, let me try to remember. I believe these are daylily. These are from daylily leaves. I really wanted to pull from things that I could find in my area. It was important for me to focus on materials that were not brought in from other places, and it had to do with making do with what you have and creating pieces that also took a lot of time. I was interested in expending a lot of time on the work. So I did a lot of like really laborious wrapping, and you can walk over here. Yeah, we've got some, I started to also use copper as a way to think about conduit, things that connect copper is a natural conduit. So I've got some copper elements in the work as well. So I'm going to have you guys walk this way. This is wrapped around that rope. Yeah, this is all wrapped. But this is not wrapped. This is handmade rope. Yeah, it's got a kind of a braid feel. Oh, I know. Yeah, I found a whole bunch of them. This is a tapestry that a weaving that I made that was really like the epitome of like spending a lot of time on something. So I just wanted to talk about invisible labor. This is very visible labor, but I wanted to talk about the invisible labor that exists in families. And I chose this pattern because it is a pattern that I had seen in my childhood at my grandmother's house. It's called double bow tie or two blooms. There's some different names for it. No one really knows the inventor of this actual pattern. And I chose to hand spin all of the yarn that is in the warp. So I hand carded and hand spun all of that yarn. And I intentionally wanted the pattern to go from clarity to a lack of clarity and back to clarity. This is also kind of grappling with memory loss and time. So that's basically the foundation of that piece. Thanks. With this work, this is actually a very, very fine rope that is made from a mother spider plant. I know it was a mother spider plant because it had all of these babies, and it had some very healthy babies, and then it died. The mother plant died, and I just felt like that was just so metaphorical. And I got all the dead leaves from the mother spider plant and made this rope. I also wanted to make these little references to lockets. So these are like little jewelry lockets. I do use this a lot in my work where I want something to reference jewelry. So this is kind of referencing jewelry. I feel like jewelry is something that is very often handed down. I wanted to talk about lineages in life and how we hand things down through the generations. So that's basically that
How
piece.
beautiful you included the heart.
Yeah, the little heart. So if you come over into this area, this piece is kind of an homage to quilting. It's not like an actual quilt. It's kind of an a process that you can use in quilting, but I left all of the cardboard in it. And the dies that are in this piece are from either above the ground or below the ground. So the below the ground dies are all the darker dies. Those would be black walnut and some different kind of seed dyes, contrasting the other one is marigold. I wanted to kind of explore the above and below. All of these works for me also kind of grapple with death and thinking about memory. So some of these works are kind of like talking about that, going into the earth, where all the ancestors are held, and how you develop a relationship with death that's healthy. And then this is a piece I made here. It's got another rope wrapped through it. This is a rope made from choke vine. And then there's text. Of course, here you can see the chain is made of text. And there's some different words here on the piece. You can figure out the words, what they say or not. Doesn't matter to me. I think it's a feeling of locket. It's a feeling of something that's handed down that I think is important. And come on over here to this quilt. This was the beginning of this whole series of work. I made this piece first and actually finished it last. So this was a summer worth of research based on plant and natural dyes, none of which I knew anything about. So I had to do a lot of experimentation. Each one of these is a different plant dye, a wide range of things, but all my constraint was that everything had to be from my area. One dye here, this blue dye, is actually indigo that was grown by someone who I met here in our area, and they had a community dye bath. So that is why I got to use a little bit of indigo in this piece. I was very interested in creating this gradient and fade. I was interested in the piece being about body size, and these are copper. These are plant shapes that are from plants that people medicinally use for memory loss. I also created this stitch out of copper, kind of to create a conduit up and down that's met in the middle. So you can just think about it and whatever meaning you want from it. But that's kind of the basic of that work. Also, there's the dyes from below the ground and the dyes from above the ground, dyes from plants and flowers and leaves. And there are dyes from nuts and seeds and things that exist underground. This is a piece, this is a little locket here that's pounded copper, and a little handmade chain that's copper. Just a little locket that hangs here. It's very loose. And then we have a collection of ceramic teardrops that are being held in different ways at the bottom. I feel like it's my little land art inside. Little teardrops. And then this piece here is some experimentation with rope. This is made from tea bags that I had tea with my mother. And this is a little teardrop that I made from that. And this is just another rope teardrop. I felt like this was a nice epitome of like a relationship. Okay, and this piece itself is, it has another little locket down here. It's got some text. The text is from a medieval botanical remedies. So they are from actual remedies from the medieval era, from Hildegard of Bingen, who wrote the remedies. But they also felt to me to mean other things. So this one in particular says, when held in the mouth. So that's what it says, when held in the mouth. It's got a little hand holding on. The chain comes down all the way from the top. And then this is made with organic copper tape, which is used in, and lead, which is used in stained glass. I did it on textiles. The original thought was that it was going to be an archway, which I then turned upside down. And I kind of like how it feels like a veil or a wing or a leaf. The leaf pattern itself is also from a medicinal plant that you take for memory. And that's it. That's the new work.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And next week, join us with Open Door Columbus. We have 4 artists from Open Door Columbus. So be with us. And so happy to have you with us today, with Melissa.
Thank you so much.
Wasn't wonderful? And we're so honored to have had her as artist in residence.
That was awesome.
Awesome? Oh, good.
I loved it. It
Say
was
one
fantastic.
thing you love about this.
Oh my gosh. The community,
Yes.
seeing everyone working, seeing everyone like painting their work and like making new things was the best, and just the joy that everyone got from it. Just being around that was very inspiring.
Our beloved Cultural Arts Center. Yes.